In the year 336 BC, Alexander III inherited the small kingdom of Macedon in Greece from his father, King Philip II of Macedon. 13 years later, in 323 BC, Alexander would die in the great city of Babylon at the young age of 32, having conquered the known world and cemented his name as one of the greatest military leaders in recorded history. The empire of Alexander the Great, though larger than any in history to that point, would fracture soon after his death, as his generals and former allies would take portions of his conquests as their own, forever weakening this once great empire and cementing its inevitable decline. But what if this wasn't the fate of Alexander's great empire? What if the new Hellenistic world remained united? What if Alexander the Great had lived? The exact cause of Alexander the Great's death has been debated, with some historians believing he died due to disease, while others believe he may have been poisoned by his own generals. Either way, one thing is for certain. To ensure Alexander not only lives, but is also successful in ruling well after 323 BC, we have to first prevent his raging alcoholism. For all his great achievements, Alexander the Great fell quickly to alcoholism during his campaigns in Persia. This led to the rapid decline of his mental and physical health and caused him to make many fatal mistakes, like drunkenly killing his friend and general Cletus the Black 6 years after Cletus saved Alexander's life in the middle of battle. Pretty important guy to keep around. Alexander's drunken decline may have directly led to his death, either by leaving his body too weak to fight off the sickness that killed him, or by turning his generals against him to the point of assassination. To prevent this, we will go back to Alexander's upbringing. Alexander the Great was raised in the tutelage of Aristotle, who, among other lessons, stressed the importance of the Hellenistic tradition of watering down one's wine to remain composure and sobriety. We will have Alexander strictly adhere to this custom, preventing his rapid decline and saving him from an early grave. What would Alexander do next? Would he conquer China, India, discover America? Or would he just go back home after finishing off the Persians once and for all? There's some evidence to suggest that he may have meant to conquer the Persian coast next, so we'll start there. Alexander's army, still loyal and battle-hardened, quickly subdues the tribes of Arabia. This conquest opens new avenues for trade and brings even more wealth into the Macedonian Empire. With Arabia under his control, Alexander's next move is to return home to Macedon, a kingdom he hasn't seen in years. Upon returning to Macedon, Alexander sets his sights on expanding his capital city, Pella. He envisions a grand city that reflects the glory of his empire, with towering temples, vast public spaces, and educational institutions that promote Hellenistic culture. Alexander's architects and builders worked tirelessly to transform Pella into the cultural and political heart of the empire. This has the important result of assuring Alexander's generals that he is still very much pro-Greek, and not about to turn the empire into New Persia. You see, following the completion of Alexander's conquests, he started to really worry his generals by acting, well, very Persian. He started wearing Persian clothes, praising the Persian capital city of Babylon, and started hinting that he might move his capital from Pella in Macedon to Babylon. If Alexander did historically go the way of assassination, this would have been a big reason why. Returning to Pella and making it a city unmatched even by Babylon itself would assure his generals that his new empire is still very much Greek, and that the results of his conquests will always be to bring glory back to their homeland. But Alexander is not content to rest on his laurels. He returns his attentions to conquest, starting with the mountain tribes north of Macedon. A threat to the stability of his kingdom since before his father's time, convincing the people of Greece to support the conquest would be an easy task for Alexander, especially after utterly destroying Greece's historic enemy in Persia. Leading his army into the rugged terrain, Alexander launches a series of campaigns against the barbarians to the north. His military genius once again prevails, and new lands are either subjugated or absorbed into the empire. With the northern borders secure, Alexander has now solidified Macedon as the unchallenged power in the region. Heartland secure, Alexander's ambitions grow even larger. He sets his sights on the Greek colonies in southern Italy, which have long been divided and vulnerable to outside influences. Alexander, seeing an opportunity to unite the Greek world under his rule, launches a campaign against these colonies. His forces, bolstered by his reputation and the strength of his army, quickly bring southern Italy into the Macedonian Empire. But Alexander's vision extends beyond Italy. He begins to build a massive fleet of 1,000 triremes, preparing for a campaign that would take him to the western Mediterranean and to the trading empire of Carthage. There is some historical evidence to suggest that Alexander the Great had planned to do exactly this, and use this new fleet to recreate the historical Athenian dominance of the Mediterranean on a greater scale. The war against Carthage is long and brutal, but notably, the Greeks are better able to combat Carthage than the Romans were in our timeline. Before the Punic Wars, Rome had no navy and no seafaring culture to speak of. They had to build a naval doctrine from scratch after capturing Carthaginian ships, and even then were so inexperienced with naval battle that they invented a new shipboarding system to force Carthaginian ship crews into effectively land battles where the Romans had an advantage. The Greeks, however, did not suffer from this disadvantage. With over 1,000 years of history traveling the Mediterranean for trade and conquest, the Greeks that followed Alexander the Great were more than capable of conducting naval warfare, and with a fleet of 1,000 triremes and Alexander's military genius on their side, they were able to decisively defeat Carthage and annex their lands and trade outposts into the growing empire. Carthage's vast trade networks and rich territories add new riches to Alexander's empire, and the growing spoils of war keep his generals by his side. Alexander establishes new cities along the North African coast, each one a beacon of Hellenistic culture and military power. In each of these new conquests, Alexander is determined to maintain dominance over the region. To accomplish this, he sets out to Hellenize the new peoples of his empire and ensure their military support for future generations. He establishes schools and academies where Greek philosophy, science, and art are taught to the local populations. Military training centers are established, and young men from every household in the conquered territories are brought to be trained in Macedonian ways of war, ensuring that the conquered peoples are integrated into his vast army, which now stretches from the Atlantic to the Indus River. These new cities not only serve as administrative centers, but also as cultural hubs that blend Greek and local traditions. Alexander's vision of a unified world under Hellenistic influence begins to take shape, with Greek becoming the dominant language across the empire. After years of continuous campaigning and expansion, Alexander finally allows himself and his men a period of rest. During this time, the empire's trading networks flourish. Cities along the Arabian coast stand out as they participate in rich new trade with the Indian subcontinent. News spreads quickly of these riches, and more importantly, where they came from. Alexander's curiosity of the world and ambition for conquest are piqued once again. Alexander decides to return to the Indian subcontinent, where he had previously fought but never fully conquered. This time, he plans to take on the mighty Mauryan Empire. Recognizing the vastness of the task and the need to groom a worthy successor, he summons his son, Alexander IV, to join him in this grand conquest. The young prince, eager to prove himself, is placed in command of a portion of the army as they march into India. The campaign is challenging, with fierce resistance from the Mauryans, but Alexander's superior tactics and the discipline of his forces eventually lead to victory. India, with all its wealth and unique culture, is now part of the Macedonian Empire. Having secured India, Alexander makes a strategic decision that will shape the future of his empire. He appoints his son, Alexander IV, as the governor of the East, ruling over Persia and India from the city of Babylon. This move is not just about administration. It is a deliberate effort by Alexander to prepare his son for the enormous task of ruling the largest and most diverse empire in history. Under the guidance of his father, Alexander IV learns the intricacies of governance, military strategy, and diplomacy. The young prince, now a seasoned leader, begins to develop his own vision of the empire, one that builds on his father's legacy. He sends teachers and priests from the new eastern territories to Greece to learn the Hellenistic traditions, and requests that Greek philosophers come to India to learn the ways of this new people, effectively spreading knowledge and ensuring lasting understanding between the peoples of this vast empire. Following his father's lead, Alexander IV establishes great cities and learning centers in the subcontinent, and orders a son of every household in the region be brought to train in the martial ways of Macedon in new military centers. Families are compensated for the service, and newly trained men are sent to garrison all across the empire. As the years pass, Alexander the Great, now in his 60s, begins to feel the weight of his conquests. He has achieved more than any leader in history, but even he cannot escape the passage of time. In the year 290 BC, at the age of 66, Alexander the Great dies peacefully in his palace in Pella. His death is mourned across the empire, but there is no chaos or power struggle. Alexander IV, now a capable and respected leader, assumes the throne. He inherits an empire that is not only vast but also stable and prosperous, thanks to the groundwork laid by his father. Under the rule of Alexander IV, the Macedonian Empire continues to flourish. The Hellenistic culture that his father spread across the known world becomes the foundation of a new era of peace and prosperity. The cities that Alexander the Great built remain centers of learning, trade, and culture for centuries to come. In this alternate history, Alexander the Great's legacy is not just one of conquest, but of unification and cultural exchange. His dream of a world united under Hellenistic ideas becomes reality, shaping the course of history in ways we can only imagine. And so we are left to wonder, what if Alexander the Great had lived? How different might our world be today if one man's life continued just a few years longer? The possibilities are endless, but one thing's for certain. He would have liked the video for the YouTube algorithm. What do you think? Leave a comment below of how you think the world would change if Alexander the Great had lived. Thank you for watching. If you're interested in these alternate histories, I'll be posting new videos every day for the next 30 days. If this interests you, consider subscribing to the channel. If you have an idea for an alternate history you'd like to see, comment your idea below. If you would like to further support my channel, I have a link to my Patreon in the description, where you'll get early access to videos and have your name read at the end of each video. Thank you for watching. I've been Future History.